The ledger and the late hours. It's past midnight. I'm at the kitchen table, a single candle burning, staring at my father's shaky handwriting in his ledger. Double tax. Two words that can make or break your retirement. You paid into the system for 40 years and now, you're taxed again. Why are we still using rules written back in 1984? The same numbers, the same fear. Will Social Security still be there for us? And under the red on-air light, that private question became a public debate. It's midnight, and I can't stop hearing my cousin Daniel's chair scraping against the floor. I'm sitting at my kitchen table now. Dad's yellowed ledger open in front of me. A half-burned vanilla candle casting shadows across his careful calculations. The house is quiet except for the refrigerator's hum. And that relentless clock, the same one Mom bought at Target 23 years ago, when she and Dad moved in with me after his diagnosis. My journal lies open, but I've been staring at the blank page for an hour. How do you write about watching your family fracture over money? That hasn't even been taxed yet. $847 monthly Social Security minus $127 federal tax, $720 actual. In plain English, that tax is 1 month of medicine gone. Let's be clear, Social Security isn't a bonus. It's your money. You earned it. And now, you're taxed twice. Dad's handwriting gets shakier as the pages progress. By 2018, the numbers wobble like they're trying to escape the page. But he never stopped calculating. Never stopped trying to make those dollars stretch. Tool and die makers plan everything down to thousandths of an inch. He approached retirement the same way. Bottom line, even the most careful planning can't beat a system stacked against retirees. I can still hear Walter's voice from this afternoon's show. 73 years old. John Deere factory floor. 38 years. It's double dipping, plain and simple. He sounded just like Dad would have sounded if he'd ever called into a radio show. But Dad was too proud for that. Too proud to complain about paying taxes on the Social Security he'd earned. With hands that were permanently stained with machine oil. The pharmacy bag on my counter holds Mom's medications, $1,847 in Social Security. Minus taxes. Minus Medicare Part B premiums at $174.70. Minus Part D. Minus the supplements Medicare doesn't cover. This isn't about politics. It's about medicine versus groceries today, not someday. The math is relentless. Michael was right at dinner. Eliminating the Social Security tax would give her back $221 a month. That's her Januvia for diabetes. Or most of her Eliquis for atrial fibrillation. It's not abstract policy. It's medicine or groceries. If you're watching this right now, ask yourself, what would $200 more a month mean for you? Medicine? Heat? Groceries? But then I think about Daniel's face at dinner. The way his jaw tightened when Michael called him selfish. Danny, who paid for Emma's SAT prep courses without being asked. Who quietly covered Mom's car repairs last year, and made us promise not to tell her. He makes $285,000, fantastic money. American dream money. His parents came here from El Salvador with nothing. Now their son drives a Tesla and lives in West Des Moines Best School District. And we're asking him to pay another $11,400 in Social Security taxes. This is the retirement crisis in plain sight. Families divided, Social Security checks shrinking, and the burden of double tax. In other words, it's not just about dollars, it's about families breaking apart. This is a fictionalized story, and not legal, tax, or investment advice. I have to remind myself of that. Even in my own journal. The line between the personal and professional has blurred beyond recognition. Jennifer from Cedar Rapids called me naive on air. So let's boil it down. One side says, the money's running out. The other side says, our dignity is on the line. Both can't be ignored. If this story resonates with you, give this video a quick like so more retirees can find it. If you know someone worried about retirement, share this video with them. It could make a difference. Nothing's free in this world, she'd said. And I'd given her the measured, professional response about revenue offsets and high earner contributions. But sitting here at midnight, I wonder if she was right. Are we just shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic of American retirement planning? The candle flame flickers, and I remember Tommy's face through the studio glass, his mother crying while watching our show. Korean immigrants. Dry cleaning shop. 40 years of 16-hour days. They did everything right. Saved in their 401k. Modest pension from the shopping center where they leased space. Social Security they paid into religiously. Now they're discovering that comfortable retirement in America means choosing between property taxes and prescription drugs. Michael from Davenport is still working at 67. Can't afford to retire with the taxes. When he called, I heard desperation dressed up as hope. The Golden Promise Act could change everything, he'd said. But what if it doesn't pass? What if it does pass, but gets repealed 2 years later? The Golden Promise Act, a bill in Congress. Some say it could change everything. But here's the problem: even if it passes, it could be repealed just 2 years later. We're asking people to plan 30-year retirements based on political promises that rarely survive one election cycle. I flip through Dad's ledger to 1994. His neat columns: gross income, Social Security contribution, federal tax, state tax, net take-home. He was 54 then. My age now. Did he imagine that 30 years later, his daughter would be on the radio, explaining to millions why their Social Security checks, the ones they'd counted on, planned for, earned, were still being taxed? Using thresholds from when a gallon of gas cost $1.15. The irony burns. I'm supposed to be neutral on air. Balanced. Professional. Both sides have valid points. But how can I be neutral? When I watched Mom count out pills this morning, splitting them to make them last longer? When Janet's father just moved into assisted living, that costs more than he ever made working? When my own retirement planning spreadsheet, yes, I inherited Dad's obsession with numbers, shows a gulf between what I'll need and what I'll have. Emma's college financial aid forms are probably still on Michael's dining room table. Another generation learning that in America, being middle class means making too much for help, but too little for comfort. The cycle continues. I write in my journal, will Social Security still be there for us? It's the question nobody wants to ask directly, but everyone thinks about at 3 a.m. Not just, will it exist, but, will it mean anything? Will working 40 years guarantee dignity? Or will we all be splitting pills and checking grocery receipts like they're medical diagnoses? The candle has burned down another inch while I've been writing. Time measured in wax. Like retirement measured in diminishing dollars. Tomorrow, today, actually, it's past midnight, I'll be back on air. Callers will ask about contribution caps. And tax thresholds. And legislative probabilities. But what they're really asking is, will I be okay? Will my parents be okay? Will my kids have to take care of me? I close Dad's ledger gently. Like it's something sacred. Because it is. It's the record of a man who believed that hard work and careful planning would be enough. Who believed that America keeps its promises. Tomorrow, I'm going to break protocol. I'm going to tell my listeners the truth. I don't know if the Golden Promise Act will pass. I don't know if Social Security will be there for us the way it was for our parents. But I do know that we deserve better than fighting about it at family dinners. Better than choosing between medicine and groceries. Better than retiring into poverty after working our whole lives. The candle flame gutters but doesn't die. I take that as a sign and write my final line for tonight. Tomorrow, I ask the question out loud. Not whether we can afford to eliminate Social Security taxes, but whether we can afford not to. The question keeps coming back: will Social Security really be there for us? Truth. The on-air sign blazed red like a warning, casting its glow across Ana Ramirez's face as she leaned into the microphone. Today we put that question on the table. Should the Social Security tax be eliminated or kept in place? Through the soundproof glass, Tommy Chen held up both hands. 10 seconds to live. The studio felt smaller with two guests seated across from her. Papers and coffee cups creating a barrier of preparation between them. Good morning, Heartland. You're listening to Your Money, Your Years on WMID. Tonight, two very different voices. Ask: does the Golden Promise Act fix Social Security? Or break it? Anna's voice carried its usual warmth. But Tommy noticed her fingers drumming against the desk, the same nervous tick from when her cousin Daniel had stormed out last night. She'd told him about it during the commercial break. Voice tight with family pain. With me in studio are Patricia Moore, tax attorney with 30 years of experience in retirement planning, and Harold Jenkins, retired teacher from Mason City, who's become something of a citizen expert on this legislation. Patricia, let's start with your concerns. Patricia Moore adjusted her reading glasses. Her gray suit as precise as her arguments. Anna, I appreciate the emotional appeal of this bill. But we need to talk about math, not feelings. The Social Security Trust Fund is already projected to be depleted by 2033. That's 8 years away. Pause there. For anyone listening, 2033 is just around the corner. That's your next doctor's bill. That's your next property tax cycle. It's not far off. The Golden Promise Act would accelerate that timeline by removing $950 billion in revenue over the next decade. But that's assuming nothing else changes, Harold Jenkins interrupted. His flannel shirt and John Deere cap. A stark contrast to Patricia's corporate armor. I taught algebra for 34 years. I can do math. The bill raises $865 billion from high earners. That's a $85 billion gap over 10 years, $8.5 billion a year. We spend that much on military contractors' coffee budgets. Patricia's jaw tightened. Mr. Jenkins, with all due respect, your $3,600 annual tax savings. It's not savings, Ms. Moore. It's my money that I already paid taxes on when I earned it. My pension got cut by 40% when the district went broke. My 401k lost 30% in 2008. Social Security is all I have left. That they promised wouldn't be touched. Anna watched the exchange, remembering Michael's voice at dinner. Doesn't their Social Security check deserve to be sacred? She forced herself back to professional neutrality. Let's get specific about impact. Harold, you've calculated your personal benefit from this bill. Harold pulled out a worn notebook. Not unlike Anna's father's ledger. My Social Security is $2,340 a month. My wife's is $1,180. So here's the math: $3,600 a year in taxes. That's the difference between keeping your home or selling it. Combined, we're at $42,240 annually. After the standard deduction, we pay federal tax on about $16,000 of our Social Security. That's $1,920 in taxes. Add my wife's portion. We're looking at $3,600 a year. That's our property tax, Anna. That's staying in our home. Versus selling to some investment company. If you know someone worried about retirement, share this video with them. It could make a difference. So here's the bottom line: this debate isn't numbers on a page, it's whether you can stay in your home. Tommy's phone lit up with texts. His mother again: this man is us. Exactly us. He pushed the thought away. And queued up the next caller. Patricia leaned forward. But Mr. Jenkins, what happens when the trust fund runs dry 3 years earlier? Because of this bill. What about means testing? What about raising the retirement age? Those are the real threats coming. We have a caller, Anna announced. Grateful for the interruption. Janet from Waterloo, you're on the air. I just want to say, Ms. Moore, you probably make more in a month than I see in a year. It's easy to talk about fiscal responsibility when you're not choosing between Medicare Part B premiums at $174 a month or keeping the heat above 62 degrees in January. Patricia's composure cracked slightly. Ma'am, I understand the challenges, but do you really? My husband worked for John Deere for 41 years. UAW union member. Never missed a day. Now they tax his Social Security. Like it's some luxury windfall. Again, this isn't left versus right. This is about whether retirees can live with dignity. This isn't just a tax debate. This is the retirement crisis of our time. Do you believe Social Security checks should be sacred? Tell me in the comments. Anna felt the conversation spinning toward the same fracture that had split her family last night. Reminder to all our listeners. This is a fictionalized discussion and not legal, tax, or investment advice. Patricia, what about the argument that the original tax thresholds from 1984 were never indexed to inflation? That's a fair point, Patricia conceded. If they had been, we'd be talking about thresholds of $74,000 for individuals today. Not $25,000. But retroactively fixing that would cost. Everything costs. Harold's voice rose. My insulin costs $340 a month. My wife's heart medication costs $280. You know what doesn't cost anything? Keeping promises. To people who worked their whole lives. Tommy held up a sign, 2 minutes to break. Another caller was holding. Someone who'd been patient for 12 minutes. We have time for one more caller, Anna said. Stephen from Des Moines. Make it quick. The voice that came through was younger. Sharper. Ms. Ramirez, I have a question for you specifically. Anna's stomach dropped. Something in the tone felt personal. You make a good salary at WMID, right? Public radio, but still decent money. At the end of the day, the debate boils down to this. Who carries the heavier load? Do you pay Social Security tax on your whole salary? Or does it cap out like everyone else's at $168,600? The studio went silent. Even Tommy stopped moving. Because if it caps for you, Stephen continued. Why should you get to keep that tax break? While telling my dad, who makes $280,000, and already pays more taxes than your entire salary, that he needs to pay more. What about you, Anna? Should people like you be exempt too? And this is what Social Security cuts really mean, not headlines, but choices between medicine and heat, between dignity and survival. Anna's mind went blank. The red on-air sign seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. She thought of Daniel's face at dinner, of her father's ledger, of Tommy's parents splitting pills. The questions Stephen asked weren't just about policy. They were about her place in this whole debate. Her privilege to discuss others' struggles. From the safety of a radio booth. Patricia and Harold both stared at her. Waiting. Tommy's hand hovered over the commercial button. Ready to save her. That's, Anna's voice caught. That's a fair question, Stephen. And we'll address it when we come back from break. Tommy hit the button. The on-air sign went dark. Anna slumped in her chair, knowing that when the red light came back on, she'd have to answer not as a radio host, but as a person caught in the same system as everyone else. Harold reached across the desk and patted her hand. It's okay, he said quietly. We're all trying to figure out whose side we're on. The congressional hearing may sound like politics, but the real issue is simple. Can you still afford your prescriptions? Can you keep your home? So let me ask you, can you still afford your prescriptions? Can you keep your home? If this struck a chord with you, hit like, subscribe, and share your own Social Security story in the comments. Because this isn't just politics, it's about survival. These aren't partisan battles. They're the everyday battles of American retirees. And remember, the more people hear this, the harder it is for Congress to ignore.